Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for registering and logging on to join our CPD this afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ruth Comfort Morris, the Education Manager here with the SCSI, and I'm absolutely delighted to invite Ian back to speak with us today on a very important topic, and we'll just get hand over to introduce Ian now in a minute. But the webinar today is a follow-on from a CPD Ian very well delivered with us in summer last year, and we will pick up these topics again in training that we have lined up with Ian at the end of next month, but we can share those details with everybody after the session today. So Ian, before I hand over to yourself, just wanted to formally kind of welcome you today, and then everyone, just to introduce Ian slightly, that Ian is a member who's very active internationally as an FM professional. He's employed with the Dutch Ministry of Defence as head of FM, and among others, he's responsible for the strategic portfolio management, service design and policy development, as well as the rollout and implementation of ISO 41001 in locations, improving military lodging. Ian has various companies and is very active globally, so absolutely is a very good authority and speaker on the topic today. In addition to those responsibilities, Ian's also a chairman of the European FM Standards Committee, and within the ISO FM Standards Committee, he's chairman of the AG1 Roadmap for Strategic Portfolio and head of the delegation for the Netherlands. Ian, you are very welcome to join us this afternoon. I hope I didn't butcher your bio and experience there, but I might just hand over to yourself, and I look forward to the session with you this afternoon. Thanks very much, Ian.
Thank you, Ruth. And well, actually, that saves us just some time. That's always good. There's lots of information to be told and to be shared. And let's see, let you see where it goes. So yeah, it's been almost a year ago since I did the first CPD webinar on ISO 41001 for SCSI. And in today's session, well, I would like to take a look on what's happened since in the world of ISO 41000. And furthermore, I will try to have you look beyond the current corona pandemic and explore how the standard, in this case ISO 41001, can help FM professionals prepare for the next crisis. Of course, the next crisis is not really nice to talk about if we're in the middle of a pandemic, which doesn't seem to end, but anything could happen in the future. And we, as the guardians of the built environment, should be prepared for that. So how can this standard help us? But just to make sure that you guys do not fall asleep, I created some polls, and I would be interested to know who of you attended last year's, actually that was in April 7th, the CPD on ISO 41001. Okay. Let's stop. 88% voted. Let me share the results with you. If everything is correct, you can see now the polling results. Is that correct?
We can indeed, Ian.
Good. So what we see, first of all, I reckon the number of attendees will increase during the presentation. But out of the people that are right here, who are present right now, nobody has attended last year's CPD. So actually, I think that's it's a shame, but on the other end, it's really good, because that means I will have lots and lots of new information for you guys. So wonderful. So what are we going to do today? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the evolution of FM standards. And after that, well, that's an interesting one. Why do we have facility management? What is the real purpose of facility management? I'm quite sure everybody has a notion of that. But the question is, how does it fit in the bigger picture? And an interesting one, how can FM really be in control in a world that is Vuca? If you do not know the acronym Vuca yet, you will know after this CPD. And this is an interesting question also. Even before the pandemic, often you would hear that FM was always lagging behind, was always reactive. Why is that? And what can we do about it? And how can a management system help us? What is a management system? What is a management system standard? And coming to that, there's a management system standard for FM, ISO 41001. How does it work? And you will find that it's all based on risk. We approach everything from a perspective of risk. So how does it work and what's the advantage of that? And what are the clauses in ISO 14001 and how does it relate to ISO's high level structure that you might have heard about? Then, of course, what's always interesting, there are a number of companies and organizations in the world that have implemented ISO 14001 or actually got certified. And so what did they learn from the COVID pandemic? Were they better prepared than others? So I'll show you some anecdotal case studies. And I'll go a little bit deeper into the training courses that Roos already mentioned, the process of certification and accreditation. And if there's still time, I can dig a little bit deeper into the differences and similarities between ISO 9001, which you all probably will know, and ISO 41001. Then again, the program is packed, so bear with me. Who am I? Well, Roos already mentioned that. I'm the director and founder of ISO 41001 CSI. That's a very small company that offers bespoke training and consultancy on strategic FM based on ISO 41001. As Roos also mentioned, I'm rather active in the world of standardization. I'm also one of the authors of the standard we're going to talk about today. Currently the chair of the European standards, the development, the European Technical Commission for FM standards, and the former chair of ISO, and of IFMA, sorry. And I'm sorry, Roos, I'm not working anymore as the head of FM for the Dutch Ministry of Defense, but I'm now full-time employed at the new organization, which is called Service Point. The Service Point is the supply and demand organization, or as you could say, the FM organization for the Ministry of Defense that will support all our commanders and directors and all the end users at the 40 plus Army and Navy and Air Force installations in the Netherlands. This organization will start in July this year and is completely based on ISO 41001 for its framework. Some tips. You can ask questions. On your screen, you will find the menu bar where you can fill in questions. And of course, there will be answers at the end. Unless, of course, the questions are really relevant for what's happening at that time in my presentation. And one of the moderators can bring the question forward. And if you can't see me, you should just select full screen. Well, having said that, I see the number of attendees has gone up to 23. So we are, the numbers are growing, so that's good. So let's start with the program itself. And let's start with a brief history of facility management standards. So I realize it being 2021 now, it's been 20 years ago that in the Netherlands, we created a Dutch standard, a Dutch FM standard called NEN 2748, which was the terms of facilities, classification and definition. That was, as far as we can recall, the first FM standard in the world. And the group of experts we had at that time realized that all those facility services, the different facility services and the management function were not properly defined. They were not working together in a proper way. The vocabulary was not really logical and it seemed like, well, there were some efficiencies to be gained. So what they did, they created a standard in which we found a generic language that actually everybody would understand when we would be talking about facility management and facility services. And that language was costs. So for every activity within facility management and facility services, they were able to bring it into a cost perspective. And by doing that, this was a very successful standard in the Netherlands because suddenly we were able to communicate with the C-suite about what we were doing. The bad thing about that is that since then we've only been talking about costs, and we've been trying, of course, to go into the part of added value. But then again, it was the beginning. We had the definition, and facility management was a topic that was talked about in the C-suite. The development of this standard almost immediately realized in interest from other countries in Europe. But NEN 2748 is a Dutch standard. It's a national standard, so you can't use it abroad. So there was a need to start creating European standards. And that happened in 2003, when the European CEN-TC 348 facility management was started under leadership of the Dutch. This TC had the good situation in which we already had a standard that was seen as very effective and good. So we started developing a vocabulary or terms and definition standards in Europe. And the interesting part, as you see here, it took us 3 years to do that. And why does it take so long in the standards world to create a new standard? Well, we all work by the process of consensus, which means that every expert should be in agreement with each other, and that we are all working together to find a solution which is not necessarily the best solution, but is a solution that's agreeable to all, that will work in every situation. So it took 3 years to create the first standard, and in the next 6 years, we completed what we call the Magnificent Seven, the EN 5221 series of FM standards. And lo and behold, again, the same thing happened, especially in the United States and in China. There was lots of interest in what was happening in Europe. And there was a need for a more international standard. And that was reason for Stan Mitchell to start ISO TC 267 in 2011, and he started with the standards we had developed in Europe as a basis for the new ISO standards. And before that time, BSI published their first real FM standard in 2008. Well, I mentioned the process of consensus, and actually this time it took us 6 years to create the ISO 41011 vocabulary, the first standard in the series that was published in 2017. The second one was ISO 41012, which was based on EN 5221-2, and that's guidance on strategic sourcing and the development of agreements. Both standards are actually, so they started with the European standards, but they're actually a clear improvement over those standards. The third standard that was published in 2017 was 40013, which is about scope, key concepts, and benefits. It's a very effective and short standard if you want to learn more about what FM is, what it can do, and what the benefits are. Easy if you want to explain what FM is. 2018, well, yeah, that was the year when the crown jewel of the series was published, ISO 41001, Management Systems, Requirements with Guidance for Use. This standard makes further evolution of facility management as we know it possible. It enables us to develop from a more or less operational and reactive state, where we try to satisfy the ever-changing demands from our clients and customers, to a more strategic and proactive organization, focusing on delivering value to the demand organization. And moreover, what is also really important is the first standard that actually the FM organization can get certified for. And again, here I have a poll for you guys. Is certification for a management system in FM, will it be beneficial? Can it be beneficial for an FM organization? Will it add value? I'll give you a couple of moments longer. We have about 50% of the people voted already. Well, let's start there. Well, I must say your feedback it makes sense. Uh, if you would not think it would be relevant, probably you would not be in this session. But I can also imagine that it's still unclear, because what does it actually mean? What would be the advantage of ISO 41001 certification over, for instance, 9001 or 55001? So I hope it will be a little bit more clear later on in this presentation. Let me go to the next one. So in September of last year, ISO 41014 was published, the development of FM strategy. And that's also marked the last standard that was developed in ISO TC 267 under the leadership of Stan Mitchell. Because early this year, we have had a new chairman, Vuca Model. If you do not know him yet, Duncan is also the chairman of Global FM. He's from Australia. And you probably know him from FM Day. Now, in this year, what is planned to be published is facility management of 41015, influencing organizational behaviors for improved facility outcomes. This is actually the first standard about people within the built environment, about people working in facility management, but also the people in the demand organization that we serve. And the question, of course, is how can we work as people together and create a situation in which people have a more effective behavior. The other one is also very exciting, ISO TR 41016, which is about technology in facility management. And technology should be seen in the most broad sense as you can imagine. So it's not only about physical systems, it goes all the way up to AI, digital twinning, building information modeling, whatever, and how it all works together. And it's about the scope, key concept, and benefits. And the idea is that this will help us as facility manager connect all the dots between all those vertical columns where different types of technology happen in the built environment, and we have to work with that. Next year, we have ISO 41017, emergency management, which is called Guidance on Emergency Management of Epidemic Prevention in the Workplace. This year, we've seen many standards develop and documents being published on, for instance, managing the pandemic. But this is the first one that will focus on, as a standard, on what FM can do, because that's not the same thing as in the medical world. And it goes further than COVID, because this is being led by our Chinese friends, and they've seen SARS, MERS, and COVID, and we're quite sure there will be something else. And it could be anything else than another pandemic. It could also be any other disaster that strikes your building or your city or your country. So again, this standard should help the facility manager in preparing for and managing an emergency if it was to occur, using the knowledge we have at this moment. 41018, again, is a logical one. It's about the development of a facility management policy, which of course follows the strategy part. New work items we're working on at this moment would be 41019, sustainability and resilience, where the connection is made between the UN Sustainable Development Goals and facility management. And 41020, performance management and measurement, which will go deeper into what is performance management, what are performance indicators, what are key performance indicators, and making the connection to FM, because that's definitely a topic that's very hard for many people to truly understand and truly utilize within facility management. So lots of work is going on within the ISO TC 267 and in expanding the ISO 41000 family of FM standards. And if you're interested in any of these topics and want to join us in the process of writing these standards, please get in touch with your national standards body and your mirror committee, because we need all the experts we can find in making sure we write the best standards for the facility management professional. And I mentioned it already in ISO 41011 vocabulary. There are definitions, and we have a new definition of facility management or facilities management, because One of the decisions that has been made is that it actually doesn't matter if we call it facilities management or facility management, because we mean exactly the same thing. This definition, in my eyes, is quite possibly the most ambitious and inclusive definition of facility management until now. And the term built environment has been chosen intentionally, and it goes much further than the building. It includes offices, schools, houses, hospitals, factories, hotels, resorts, campuses, airports, neighborhoods, but also cities. And that's really important when we're talking, for instance, about the smart cities and connected buildings and stuff like that. So it's about the built environment. And integration is, of course, the distinguishing feature for facility management. It's all about adding value and effectiveness horizontally over all the columns. And furthermore, it's all about the quality of life for people in combination with improving the productivity of the core business. So if you compare that with the old notion, the old definitions of facility management, this definition says that facility management is so much more than just supporting the business, the core business, with products and services. This requires looking ahead and predicting the needs of the core business in the future. And of course, the question is, why would this be relevant? Because in many cases, if we just deliver the products and services we've been asked to, the core business is happy with it, or are they not? Are we being asked in the C-suite to explain how we can support the core business often? Because I know that has been some of the topics in at least in the Netherlands, but also in other countries. Why are they never listening to us? In 2017, IFMA and RCS started their collaboration efforts called Define FM. Maybe you've heard about it. And actually, they created a video clip explaining what's happening in the world. And they say the world is changing rapidly and it's becoming more uncertain than ever. And according to IFMA and RCS, if facility management can make a difference as a profession that will transform our world and our future. Well, let me show you the video and see what you guys think about it. Sorry. Well, let's stop there because there's lots of propaganda for IFMA and RCS. And by the way, it's really good. I saw a question from Matthew Robinson, if it would be possible to share that video. Actually, this video you can find on YouTube if you check for IFMA RCS and we define FM. You will find that. So it is already available on YouTube. So feel free to use it. So this video was from 2017, and in 2018 and 2019, I had a number of my courses for facility management professionals, and often what I was told when I saw the video, they said, "Well, yeah, this is happening in the world, but it's not really affecting us. If I look at my campus, my building, well, we don't really see that." And well, the question, of course, is that true? Because this is happening in the world. This is, or actually, this was happening in the world. This was the world in which our demand organizations were working. So these were the topics that our clients, our demand organizations, were concerned about. And if we want to support them, that would be something that we should be thinking about also. And actually, if you look at, well, at what happened there, that was 2017. And well, this quote often connected to Charles Darwin, which of course is not completely true. But if you look at it, if you look back in hindsight, how adaptable were we as FM professionals in 2019? Well, let's make it a poll again. So was it indeed far away from us, and were we all very satisfied and prepared in our buildings, or? Well, this is at least honest. I actually see a number of yeses coming up, and I'm really interested in figuring out, because that can be saying something about that specific organization or professional. Okay, just another few seconds. Okay. Well, there's an interesting one. So about half of you say, well, no, we were not really prepared. About a third is not really sure. And about 25%, 24% this guy say, yes, we were prepared. And I would be really interested in learning more about that, because it probably says something about the way you've organized your organization. Again, we come back to that one. Well, one moment. So again, if you look at that, you have to be really adaptable to change. And well, then 2020 happened. And did the world became, or was it predictable? Were we prepared for anything that happened like last year? If you look at the situation right now, and also why I say why it would be important to prepare for the next crisis, we always tend to look at a risk event, and then, well, we do recovery controls, and we are reactive, and then we check if the outcomes, if they were successful. But in the end, those are all lagging indicators. And what we would like to do, of course, is that we would think about, okay, what are the risks we might see in the future? And we might not be able to define the risks very specifically, but we can also think in the bigger pictures. And risk could also, again, in this case, be a positive risk, the risk of becoming the biggest organization. I'm quite sure that Zoom never thought about the risk of becoming one of the biggest organizations in virtual meetings like this. And then 2020 happened. That was a risk. But also the controls you can create beforehand, just to make sure that if a risk event occurs, that you are at least able to manage that. So we need to predict future conditions better in order to support those better. And well, then we have an issue, because what I'm going to show you right now are the issues that made our work as FM professionals hard before 2020 in normal situations. And still we are required to create plans and show at least a semblance of control. I think you will find that it's correct. So before the pandemic, the question is, were you ever feeling like you were constantly playing catch up or lag behind event? And that was even before COVID happened, crisis which changed everything all over again. And so in the end, we are very busy with running the business. We'll call it business as usual. So we need to make plans in order to stay in control. We're talking about budgeting, staffing problems, real estate issues, and the execution of this, we call it running the business. So actually, if you are in a state where you can say we're running the business, it's business as usual, you might actually be in control. But that is only if you operate in a linear world. Well, I think our world is in a constant state of flux. So the effect is, if you only focus on running the business, you will be confronted with frustrations, and you will be insufficiently equipped to proper support the core business, because the core business will be focused on changing the business, because the world they live in, the world where they're trying to make a profit and where they try to stay relevant, is a Vuca world, is a world that's constantly changing. And of course, their change, they wanted to become the new business as usual. So you will always be lagging behind or need to catch up if you try to focus only on running the business. So ideally, you will be ahead of new developments. And you will not surprised by reality or a sudden unexpected crisis. So what would be needed for that? As you do not know the future, but can you perhaps prepare better? Well, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of State, almost 20 years ago, he had a famous quote, which I think is really, really good. And as he said, as we know, there are known knowns. These are the things we know. And of course, then he say, we also know there are known unknowns. That's to say, we know there are some things we do not know. Well, so far, so good. That makes sense. For some, this is the one where it becomes a little bit complex. He said, but there are also unknown unknowns, that those are the ones we do not know, And well, that's where the term Vuca comes in. The Vuca model, if you haven't heard about it, that offers us a tool to describe and understand the world we live in. And on the left side, you'll see the axis that say, well, how well can we predict the results of our reactions? And on the horizontal axis, it's about what do we actually know about the situation. And the acronym Vuca comes from volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And if we focus on the COVID-19 situation at this moment, you will find that the COVID-19 situation is the inherent nature is ambiguity. The key, that's the key variable, and also some part of the complexity part. The ambiguity here we see here is driving some of the irrational behavior we see in the cities and places around us, because there is no real cause-effect relation between the different outcomes, and we do not know what is going to happen next. And you will find there are no subject matter experts. We can't go to the World Health Organization or wherever, and they will tell us what's going to happen, or they're going to tell us everything is going to be just fine. So ambiguity is just about we do not know what we do not know. And in dealing with these situations, the only thing we can do is build assumptions to have a plan A, B, and C in place, which is happening all around us. Uncertainty means there are answers, but we just don't have them yet. But somebody will know it. So Vuca is a model we can use to understand the world we live in. And in the next little video, I'll show you a little bit about how Deloitte saw the Vuca world. It will make you understand a little bit better, I guess, what I mean here.
Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. This is the world we call Vuca. A world where non-stop unforeseen turbulence invades, where events come at us with unforgiving speed, straining organizational odds of survival. In this world, reflexes must be rapid and on target. Who will survive? Only the fittest. Who will triumph? Only the agile. In business, Vuca underscores the importance of sense-making, analytical astuteness, readiness planning, risk management, and situational problem-solving. For banks, insurers, and asset managers, barriers are being eroded. Invaders from non-traditional industries are entering the atmosphere from different lands and vantage points. Regulation and risk is far-reaching, and never before has technology become so disruptive, so exponential, so quickly. How do you lead your people through change effectively? How do you derive value from the hurdles of regulation? How do you make sure you have the most capable people? How do you set the tone at the top? How do you get your HR function to lead you through a Vuca world? How will your people make or break your expansion into new territories? Do you have the answers? Know what you are up against. Caution against letting your guard down. Master, don't run from change. Adopt a growth mindset. Balance execution, response, and agility. Choose evolution over irrelevance. Include and enable your people to contend. In the age of innovation, their thinking is your advantage. Their energy, your salvation. Identify points of triumph. Derive value from regulatory hurdles. Recruit, arm, and empower your most capable people. Develop leaders that can drive the revolution and conquer new territories. The future is Vuca. Now is the future. Get ready to revolutionize.
So I reckon you will find that 2020 proved the world is really Vuca, even if we didn't believe that in the years prior to that. So another poll. So in a world that is in a state of constant flux, you will never really be in control all the time. So how will you act in an environment that will never let you be in control? And how will you manage your uncertainties and deal with new risks? How can you make the current situation fun and challenging again as facility managed professional? Are we prepared for whatever is coming to us? Okay. Well, here too we see similar answers. Where about half of you say, well, I'm not really sure. And again, there's a number of optimists or maybe realists, I don't know, who say, well, yes, we are prepared for managing a future crisis. And a couple of people who say, well, no, we're definitely not in control yet. So again, thank you for sharing these results with me. And well, managing risk is the core of where the ISO management system standards, and in this case also ISO 41001 is based upon. So how does this risk-based approach work? It all starts with understanding the context of the organization you work for, the organization we support, but also our own organization, our own context. And what does it mean? So we're looking at issues. The numbers you see, by the way, are the clauses in ISO 41001 where these topics are described. So we have to look at the issues, the factors. So what is happening? What's happening in the world? What are the trends? What are the trends in our industry, our FM industry, but also the industry we support? And who are the stakeholders or interested parties? So who are we affecting and who is affecting us? And who do we need to consider? Because the moment we know that, then we can actually focus on what we are seeing in clause 6, risk management and compliance management. So if we're talking about from the strategic assessment we can make from the issues and the stakeholders, we can analyze and prioritize, and we can discern what the risks are. which threats do we see and what opportunities do we see? Because again, look at the COVID situation. For some organizations, this was a huge opportunity. If you were working for Pfizer-BioNTech or working for Zoom, 2020 was a top year. But if you were running a restaurant or a hotel or an airline system, it was definitely not a top year. So the meaning of risk can differ very much depending on where in the industry you're in. And if we're talking about compliance management, again, what are the requirements? What are the needs and expectations? And what are the compliance obligations we have? Bring it all together, cross-reference it, and you'll be able to be better in control during the operation, and also be able to monitor the effectiveness of your system better. So why do we actually need a facility management system standards? Well, as it says here, it helps you improve your performance, the performance of the organization. So it's not just about products and services. No, it will help your organization specify repeatable steps that you will constantly implement to achieve your goals and objectives. So you have to think about the goals and objectives beforehand and decide how you're going to measure those. But also how to create this culture within your organization that will automatically engage in this cycle of self-evaluation, correction, and improvement of operations. And it's all about employee awareness, about true leadership, not just management and commitment. And how this all works is by using the plug-in model that's called the high-level structure from ISO. And it offers a generic core elements and requirements that you'll encounter in other ISO standards too. Well, examples. So we have the generic standards such as quality management, ISO 9001, or asset management, 55001. Of course, ISO 41001 for facility management. But on the other hand, you also have the sector-specific standards, for instance, for the automotive sector or the food safety and oil and gas. And specific guidelines that we use for auditing. ISO 19011 is a very well-known one. And generic guidelines, for instance, for risk management or social responsibility. They all come together in the high-level structure. So the moment you're using standards that are based on the high-level structure, such as ISO 41001, it's very easy to incorporate all these others. So for companies, you will find that your management system standards becomes part of the corporate governance, and integration and expansion of systems becomes much easier. And the latter, which is, especially at this moment in time, is also important. It will help you deal with future challenges and crises in a Vuca world. But for the interested parties or the stakeholders, the plug-in model is also important, because what will happen is that their issues and requirements, their interests are considered in managing your organization. And of course, last but not least, government will be thrilled, because from their supervisionary and inspection role, they will notice that risk management and compliance management are an integral part of a certified management system. So it will be much easier to work together with government. Well, said enough about that. Let's have a better look at ISO 41001 itself. So again, it's the first FM management system standard. How does it look? If you look at this graph, you'll find a blue part on the top and a big white part. Why is that? Well, the standard is only for the FM organization. If you have ISO 9001, it's for the whole organization. Even if you have an internal FM organization, ISO 41001 is only for that part that's about FM. And what you see here, you see the demand organization and the FM organization, and this arrow that states the core business strategy supported by FM. So we need a dialogue, a strategic dialogue between the top management of the FM organization and the top management of the demand organization, discussing what's going to happen in the core business in the future, and how this core business strategy can be supported by FM. And if we do that, we can make a FM strategy that supports that. And if you have the strategy, you can create the FM policy, which will result in FM plans, which we can implement, measure, and improve. And from the improvement, again, we will find ways of improving the strategy and the policy. Well, FM strategy, as I mentioned already, is being explained further in ISO 41014, policy in 41018, plans you will find in these standards, measurement, that's the standard that we are going to work on this year. And in the standard itself, the clauses for plans, for the plan part, you will find in context, leadership, planning and support. Operation will be the implementing phase. Performance evaluation will be all about measuring, and of course improvement stays for itself. So this is the model of how the standards work. And if you go a little bit deeper into it, then you'll find on the vertical the clauses that constitute the high-level structure. These clauses you will find in every standard. So in ISO 9001 or 55001, you will find exactly the same clauses. And in the horizontal part, you will find the processes we all know so well by heart, like leadership and compliance management. And in green, you will find the sub-clauses you will find in ISO 41001. And why is this interesting to put it together like this? Well, the management system standard is all about preparing and organizing for success. So you want to determine if you're effective at that. And if you want to do that, you can look at specific topics like risk management, and then you'll find the clauses where there will be the information about what you should do about risk management or about stakeholder management. Or if you look at the topics of leadership, so where are the topics about leadership being described, or support of performance evaluation. And all these circles create potential audit trails if you want to do an internal or a third-party audit to see, is my system, is my organization working in an effective manner? So how does ISO 41001 work? Well, first of all, you can see it as a toolkit that you can use to screen your organization, an existing organization, a new organization, or maybe organization you want to bring together. You can identify and analyze any gaps that exist between running and changing the business, including unforeseen risks. And you can also find solutions to close this gap. So coming back to this, we want to go from lagging indicators, from being reactive to more proactive, to leading indicators. And let me present you some of the anecdotal examples of how other companies did that. So first I will take you to Yale Nash College in Singapore. And normally I would never read text. Well, I try not to read text from my slides, but in this case, I do not have much to add to the words of Dennis All, who's the Director of Infrastructure, Safety and Security. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold. What he says, when they started implementing ISO 41001 and they are certified, they said their requirements that push the teams to take things to a next level. And it required them to demonstrate how they arrived at positive outcomes rather than just showing that they have recorded SOPs like we often see. And it led them to unpack what they traditionally practiced, to re-strategize and readapt to leading instead of lagging indicators. And what he means by leading instead of lagging indicators, in this case in the facility management world, is as follows. They started implementing action plans to anticipate needs and setting targets to reduce the number of defective occurrences in the future, rather than just react to defects reported like we often do. And as he said, most FM SOPs are set to look for signs of facility deterioration. So the ISO has encouraged them to design the process to look for sources of deterioration. And what they say, at this time, they can cover more than 50% patrol routes every day, while their officers are actually also reporting double the number of observations over what they reported in the past. So there's a huge increase. And the objective, because of this, has moved, has gone to a very next level. And we're the first focusing on having an easy defaulting reporting system that would create also fast response times. Now they intend to have no defects needed to be reported by their end users, because all their officers are making those reports already, and they can fix it before it becomes a problem for the end user. And then what he says, security certification was the initial step in putting on paper what we think is a winning formula and ensuring we are ready for what the future may hold. but they also want the legacy to continue and leave a strong foundation for future teams to build upon as they continually seek and improve to push boundaries. So it goes much further than this, just getting this certificate. So it was not a paper chase for them, but a demonstration of their commitment to operational excellence and their contribution towards raising the bar in facilities management industry as a whole. So it started with, we want to get this certification process and started implementing, but the ambition became much higher because they evolved during the process. And if we're going to focus on, because this was about going from lagging to leading, what are the lessons learned from the certified organization when it's about what happened in the COVID situation? Well, let me share some studies. Well, as you now might or actually should know by now, ISO 41001 has its foundation in a risk-based approach. As Stan Mitchell, our former chairman of the TC, so eloquently states here. So one should expect that the odds are that those who implemented ISO 41001 were better prepared than most. But is this indeed the case? Well, let me take you on a journey. We were just talking about Yale NAS College. And as you see, because they already have had SARS and MERS, so they were already looking into managing the risk of a pandemic crisis. And it led them to planning for prevention and reduction of negative impact. Not knowing what type of virus or whatever pandemic, just prevention and reduction of negative impact. So they identified how they could manage these risks, and the risk can change with time, and assigned roles and responsibilities. This is also a very important one because those are typically things where we now have problems. They undertook internal and cross-departmental communication associated with risk. And after certification, they continued improving these measures. And what happened is that despite the ongoing crisis, they could maintain a customer-oriented culture of excellence with a service standard that is still acceptable to the community. And many FM organizations were not able to do that. If we go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we have LCF operations and maintenance. They implemented ISO 41001, and it forced ESON to improve their performance measurement system, which directly affected the quality of their planning and forecasting abilities. This allowed them to increase both work and quality performance and allowed them to better manage their workforce. It also resulted in the creation of more realistic and more transparent KPIs, which in turn improved the structure of and discipline within 50+ projects and the communication within the companies at all levels. And through planning for success and the usage of proper KPIs, more accurate performance data became available. And that allowed ESON to reschedule intervals for planned preventative maintenance. So they went from preventative maintenance to predictive maintenance without undue risk, thus significantly reducing operational costs. And the outcome of their efforts was better aligned with customer expectations. But they also learned something. ISO 41001 is not just another ISO standard that you can implement by just focusing on the requirements. If you want to make the standard work for you, you will need to really understand them. And it seems the standard is not a crystal ball after all. So yes, they created a separate risk register. They were prepared for all kinds of stuff, but they were caught off guard. But then again, because they created an improved structure for risk management, they were able to consolidate their efforts much sooner than expected. And they could actually start manage the crisis instead of just reacting. For anecdotal facilities management, one of the first organizations in the region that got certified, has also reaped the first benefits. What they saw because of the risk-based approach and becoming more strategically oriented, they saw their contract increase in volume, but also in duration, because of a direct or better alignment with the demand organizations. And better and more effective planning resulted in a direct reduction of operational costs. But again, here we see that the organization was better prepared for the effects of COVID-19 than was expected beforehand. Al-Shirawi is another company that's very active in this region. They had big problems in Saudi Arabia. Their contracts were very transactional in nature and for a very short duration, 1 year max. And this posed a threat for continuity, but also restricted Al-Shirawi in creating added value for the clients. And through the implementation of ISO 41001, they were forced to get a better understanding of what were the constantly changing requirements of their demand organizations. And as a result of this process, they received more time from the demand organization to fulfill new requirements, and their contracts were changed from 1 to 3 years, which was impressive. I'm now looking at Roos, and Roos, do we still have time to show a little bit more some films and go deeper into the difference between ISO 9001 and 41001?
Probably not, Ian, if we just want to open up the floor to 1 or 2 questions. I'm just conscious that people might be heading off to other meetings or that at 2.
Okay, so what I will do is I'll create a PDF of this which we can share. I will show this video because this is how Al-Shirawi managed the COVID situation, and then I'll go into the course slides, I guess.
Great, thanks, Ian.
Good.
Hi everyone, this is Krishna Kumar, General Manager for QHSE and Business Excellence for Al-Shirawi Group of Companies. COVID-19 is a widely acclaimed health crisis of all times. With its mere beginning as a pneumonia disease in December 2019, this particular disease has already claimed more than 40,000 lives world across. With ever-increasing mortality rates and high amount of fatality, this crisis is also giving very high amount of challenges to healthcare employees and HSE professionals worldwide. We in Al-Shirawi Engineering Services already understood this particular disease magnitude, and the management has taken a concrete step of developing a very well-defined contingency plan when the first incident struck in February 2020. From its inception, the management is very clear health and safety of the employees are the prominent requirement of the organization, and we've taken a concrete contingency plan. This contingency plan details the action plan what as a management system has to implement to make sure the visitors and other stakeholders, including employees, are maintaining high amount of health care, which will help the organization to strive to improve in terms of health contingency. Contingency plan talks about 4-layer system. First one is yellow. We gives more awareness about the disease. We give an induction to almost all across the people, including the visitors and staffs. The stages of amber, we given more of proactive measures which as an employee has to be taken, which is more on sanitations and hygiene controls, restricting employees coming if they are visited any of the affected countries for more than 14 days. We have a self-declaration form which has to be signed by the visitors, and these kind of control measures has been taken in the amber stage. Once it comes to the green stage, where we talks about what will be the impact of the disease, we given more on isolations and quarantine as an important care. Here the emphasis is more on what as a management systems we have to implement in terms of isolations and quarantine activities, and we given more emphasis on maintaining a proper social distance and ensuring a separate quarantine area for those who have been having suspicious diseases. The last stage never happened to Al-Shirawi, where if any employee has identified with any COVID diseases, in case of COVID disease, if it has appeared, what kind of contingency and emergency disaster plan as an organization we have to implement. We have a well-defined system which ensures our customers and other interested parties are safe throughout. Please be cautious about this particular contingency measures what Shirawi is taking, and rest assured every employee will have a safe life in Shirawi. Thank you very much.
So Al-Shirawi, or actually they created this system early in 2020. So they were actually prepared. Well, again, at this moment in time, my question would be, can you provide top management of your demand organization with proof that what you do actually helps the core business better be prepared for future crisis, or actually support them better in the future? And if the answer is no, you might want to consider implementing ISO 41001. And it's not a revolution, it's an evolution, and we really have to put on our thinking hats. Having said that, at this time, the knowledge of what ISO 41000 is and can do for your organization is severely limited in most countries and FM markets. Demand is slowly but steadily growing, and event professionals, consultants, and suppliers will be faced with questions about this standard, implementation, and certification. The one-day foundation training course helps you in answering these questions and preparing the business case for your C-suite. The 2-day implementation training course should be available later this year. And for your information, within SCSI, the foundation training course is planned for Wednesday 24 and Thursday 25 February. And those will be morning sessions because it's virtual and it will be too hard otherwise. Having said that, there was some more information about the difference between ISO 41001 and ISO 9001 and certification process. I can share that information if you like, but I suggest we use the remaining time for questions and answers. Ruth, are you in agreement?
Yes, absolutely, Ian. Sounds good.
Good. So the first question I had was about the video feeds. I used all of them are available via YouTube. Also, you can find them. Well, I can share the links through SCSI if you like. Any questions so far? Let me at least give you another poll. So there is a training course coming up next month.
Ian, as a follow-up as well, we could always share the link to our SCSI events calendar as well. Yes. with the presentation after today.
Well, what I see here, and I'm just going to stop that. I see 13 out of about 60%. No, it's going up. 70% has voted. Let's stay there. So we have at least 4 people who say yes, and we have 8 who are not sure yet, and 3 who say no. So let's see what comes out of that. More information you can find on the website. Okay, Matthew says it was difficult to find the video on YouTube as there are so many of them. I'll make sure to share the links through SCSI. That should work. Any other questions?
Ian, I know 1 or 2 people have also just popped off the meeting, our webinar today as they have other meetings. I'd suggest if anybody has a question afterwards that they might submit it into ourselves and we can share with you kind of to answer after the fact.
Yeah,
Ian,
sure.
If that might suit.
That will always be possible. Happy to come back to those questions, and if there are very specific questions, I can contact them directly.
Perfect, thank you, Ian. That'd be great.
Good. Well, if there are no other questions, Ruth, you want to close the?
Yes, I think we should, Ian. And Ian, just to say thank you very much again for returning for the CPD, and hopefully that I'm sure all of the participants today found it particularly insightful. I thought the case studies really demonstrate the global experiences, which is very, very good to kind of consider our own kind of context on that as well. I look forward to having you back next month for our training workshop, Ian. And thanks very much again.
And again, it would have been nice if it would have been a physical training session, but it seems we have to be patient and hold on.
Absolutely, patience is a virtue.
Patience is a virtue, and now we know for sure where it comes from. So.
Absolutely, but hopefully, we will have you in Merrion Square, and we'll be back in Merrion Square ourselves, and to be able to have some live sessions face to face as well in the future.
It would be lovely to be back in Ireland again.
Great. Well, fantastic. Thanks very much, Ian, and thanks everyone for attending today.
Okay, I would say stay safe, and hope to see you guys soon again.
Great. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.